Hi, everybody. It's Debbie Marlowe and Sunny Marie. We are here to talk about blue poop. Let's just throw it out there. So it's another edition of Sunny School. And just quickly, because we're going to get in it and we're going to get in it deep quick. There's a company called Zoe. I know, right? All the puns. All the puns. There is a company out there called Zoe, Z-O-E, and it's kind of been the health influencers. It's all over Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. And what you do is you make blue muffins, you eat them, and then you see what your transit times are. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about transit times, this is the perfect intro to take it away, Sunny.
Yeah, let's talk poo. It's like I was joking with actually one of my clients. I have a couple of clients who are also nutritionists or somewhere in that field. And we always joke that it leads back to poo eventually. There's almost like how many conversations so we start talking about poo. But exactly that. So we're going to talk about Zoe. We're going to talk about transit times and specifically the Blue Poop Challenge that was all over Instagram earlier this year when they launched. And then I want to go a little bit further into Zoe has actually a larger offering. So I'm going to talk a little about the studies behind that. But transit times, let's start there. So if you're not familiar, essentially we're talking about how long does it take for the substrate or the food that you eat when you eat it to exit, to make its leave, to take its leave. And generally, a healthy transit time varies, but up to 48 hours is considered a healthy transit time. Things that are longer than that, which of course, I think Suzanne and Debbie and I are here sometimes we're like, whoa, you need to be pooping more often than every 2 days. But it is highly variable per person. We would like to see that lower on an optimal scale, but your transit time can give you some really interesting insights, not only not being constipated, but also the Zoe, actually the predict studies that it's based off have found that it's a really great marker for overall gut health. So the basics of the Blue Poop Challenge come from a scientific study. I can't help but have a little bit of this was definitely made for the gram, even though it is some solid science, because blue poops and blue muffins, I mean, there's like an Instagram marketer's health dream here. But the reason they chose blue and blue muffins and blue dye in particular is that it is a novel color. So blue food dye, that color comes out the other side. Other things that you'll eat, including if you ate like blue foods, aubergine or blueberries or things like that, get digested and they don't come out blue. But blue food dye will survive the transit tract the digestive tract more or less intact, and you will see blue out the other end. So it's really clear when you look into the bowl. Hey Barb, really clear that you will see this blue food dye, and they make a muffin so they don't have to sit there and like down some kind of syrupy thing, but also to help it with a digestive, like it's something to eat as opposed to just a liquid. So I'm going to pull this up here real quick. I had to pull it up earlier. The study is actually a study that was published in Nature. If you ever want to look up someone who is very accomplished in their field.
You want me to be able to share your screen or no?
Oh, no, it's fine. I'll tell you what to Google. But this is open, so a lot of scientific studies are kind of behind a paid firewall. This one you could actually go and look at. It is called Blue Poo: Impact on Gut Transit Time on the Gut Microbiome using a novel marker. The novel marker being this blue food dye. Really quick abstract on it. This single-arm, single-blind intervention study is to assess the relationship between gut transit time and the human gut microbiome, and 2, the utility of the blue dye method as an inexpensive and scalable technique to measure transit time. So twofold parts of the study. We want to see how long it takes from consumption to exit, if that correlates with human gut microbiome profiles, and then is blue food dye a method that is inexpensive and scalable to make this a larger public health access point? And the results are essentially yes to point 2. We can definitely say that blue dye as a measure of gut transit time has the strongest association with the gut microbiome over typical transit time. And this is opposed to doing something like sesame seeds or corn kernels or other like, yeah, that we're familiar with, other ways of noting, or like corn on the cob. That's usually what most nutritionists will say. They're like, you want to check your transit time, have a spoonful of sesame seeds or eat corn on the cob and then wait for it on the back end. No pun intended, but it works. Or to eat beets is another one that most folks will say that we can see. The blue food dye was shown to have the most strong association. It's the most easily recognizable too. And it's also, as far as compliance go, people can very quickly go, oh, that's blue, as opposed to like sitting there and looking through their production. And then they also found that basically the taxonomics, so the composition of your gut microbiome, the types of, not just bugs, but parasites, microbes, gosh, I'm trying to remember, there's 4 classifications. There's essentially 5 out of the 6 larger classifications of like life on this planet exist within the human system. The thing that doesn't exist are plants. So you got the fungi, you got the bacteria, you got the protozoa, you got all of this stuff in there. So the composition of that, of your individual like gut fingerprint, if you will, correlates well with transit time. So I'm going to put this away so I can stop reading it. This leads me into the larger study here. And I'm going to say this right now, Debbie and I were talking before the call. This is going to sound like I know, like, whoo, I know all about this stuff. I am barely scratching the surface on this gut microbiome research. And that's also because the research is very new. Here's just a little like brief sunny blurb here. I'm really enjoying a book called Fiber Fueled, and Dr. Will Bilskevich, I'm saying his name wrong, I'm sure, Dr. Will B, is part of the Zoe project. I don't exactly know his affiliation with it, but he made a really great point in his book that was, when I was in high school, I wanted to work on the Human Genome Project because it was going to be the thing that changed the face of medicine. It was going to be the thing that we were going to solve for the problems of human disease. This was undergoing, and it was completed in the early noughts. I think 2006 was the finish. And while there's some amazing things that came out of the Human Genome Project, the biggest thing we found is, womp womp, we were kind of wrong about this. So this is unfurling the human genetic fingerprint. We found that genetics really only account for about 20% of human disease, 20%, which means for our purposes, 80% is left over to lifestyle. So I know, yeah, we're all shaking our heads because it's like, yep, those of us who have done holistic nutrition have probably heard this idea of the 3-legged stool, that genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle factors. And of course, now I'm blanking on the third stool, third leg, but lifestyle is the thing that pulls the trigger. So you might
Environment.
Yes, thank you, lifestyle and environment. So you might have these pre-genetic components, but that's only 20% of your likely outcomes. And that's what we found from the Human Genome Project. It also led us to go, well, pardon my language, but shit, if it's not, no pun intended again, but shit, if it's not the genome, then like, what is it? And so Will Bilskevich's hypothesis is that it's the gut microbiome. And that's where a lot of the research is going now. We kind of shifted from understanding the human genome to understanding the human like macro organism that we are, because again, we are, some factors say like up to like 80% not human because of like the volume of other stuff that resides in our gut, that our ability to digest and like process and really live depends on the presence of these gut microbiomes. So that's the long and the short of it. Why Blue Poop Challenge works, or how it works, is that it's going to take your data, your transit time, say you eat your blue muffin and then 36 hours later, you find that you have blue poop in the toilet bowl. You can then go back to the Blue Poop Challenge and share, okay, my transit time was 36 hours. And what it's going to do is it's going to take your background information, so your gender assigned at birth, your lifestyle factors, I think it asks your weight, how tall you are, so a little bit of BMI stuff, how active you are, how many plants you eat in a day. So it's taking a pretty big intake, as well as your gut transit time. And what it does is it then uses artificial intelligence to compare your individual profile to members who participated in the PREDICT-1 study. The PREDICT-1 study was a massive study completed, I believe, early last year. PREDICT-2 is under completion now, or is under work now. PREDICT-1 was 1,100 individuals between the US and UK, with 660 of those being twins, in identical or fraternal twins. We love twin studies. And using those individuals as kind of the proxies, the Blue Poop Challenge is then going to filter, and it's going to take your data and say, you are most like client 129 or whatever from, you know, the PREDICT-1 study. Given your factors and given your transit time, you are most like this person. And it's going to give you some recommendations based off of their findings from the PREDICT-1 study. The Zoe Blue Poop Challenge is free to participate in. So you could go on to, you could Google Zoe Blue Poop Challenge or Zoe Blue Poop. I'm sure we'll get you there. And it takes you to a facet of their website that shows you how to participate. You can order the muffins directly to you. They're relatively inexpensive. I believe they are gluten containing. So if you decided not to, they also provide a recipe for you to make them at home. And then there's also lots of ways, you know, people are like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. And then they give you other things, but it's getting away from their scientific proven point. So as much as you can, if you decide to do the Blue Poop Challenge, either order the muffins or make them as recommended using, you know, whatever flour it is that you want. I kind of look at this personally as a nutritionist as like, this is a kind of a one-time thing, in the same way that if you want to avoid glucola when you're doing your gestational diabetes test, totally fine. We can find other solutions for you. And assuming this is not typical, it's probably not going to hurt you too much to have blue food diet, you know, once or twice. Personal opinion there. So you can participate in your Blue Poop Challenge. It will profile you and match you with the person most likely to match your own data, and then give you recommendations from there. Like I say, free to participate in. Then I guess I can stop there. So that's the Zoe Blue Poop Challenge. There's no fee associated unless you buy the muffins, which again are like, I think they made it so, because accessibility is a big part of it. You remember back to the original Blue Poop Challenge study, they want to make this scalable and accessible. So I think it's like maybe $6 to get both muffins sent to you. So it's really not much. So I can kind of leave it there. That's the Blue Poop Challenge before I go into the larger Zoe offerings. So thoughts, questions, emotional outbursts?
So it's free, just to make sure that I have this right, because I know somebody's going to ask this. So it's $6, $10 with shipping, whatever. And then they will send you the recommendations for free as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I started to do it. I never finished it.
Okay. All right. A little busy.
Yeah, but yeah, they will send it to you. It's all based off of email. Now with that, I mean, for folks who are just curious about it here, privacy stuff. For this information as follows, you will receive calculated personalized results reporting them back to you. You get access to personalized results through a unique URL that is sent to your email. Insights about health and nutrition, as well as letting you know about other Zoe services we think you might be interested in. So there's kind of marketing side of it. Personalizing your experience, for example, using your first name and email. So you can sign up to be a citizen scientist, and they will then utilize your information for their studies. I think that's the PREDICT-3 study, or at least it might be a facet of it. And then let's see, you can also, you know, share via your socials and things like that. Purpose is to provide fun and interesting insights into your gut and its relationship to your health. We hope will encourage you to think more about the importance of the gut microbiome, and may eventually encourage you to use Zoe's other nutrition services, provide you other insights to have learned about diet and health. And then we keep this data for the Blue Poop Insight service. So they keep your information, but it's not like linked directly to you. Essentially, they're going to say like, here's an individual, you know,
so they're doing it for free, basically, just to get the information and the study.
Yes. Yeah. That's, okay. I'd say two factors. It's for them to get a larger scale, and also to kind of reinforce that, hey, we can utilize this data to use the AI, because the AI is a big part of what their service is, what the larger offerings are. So they can use that to reinforce their findings. And then also really clearly they're saying like, we hope that you learn something about this. We're going to give you, speaking very plainly, we're going to give you some really like quality information, but you're going to get so interested in this that you're going to want to eventually make the choice to do the more in-depth study with us, which also is at a lower price point than many things that are out there, and is also you can choose to participate as a citizen scientist there as well too.
Right. So we'll get into that, but basically, in case you're not aware, AI is where all of your health markers are going. AI is the continuous glucose monitors, which we hope to have some information in the next little bit about that. That's a teaser. And, you know, these different things it's going to all be AI based. And there was what was it? Was it Mark Hyman? There's a doctor, and she was on Mark Hyman's podcast, and her company is called January, and it was the CGM, January AI, and it was the CGM. Having looked at all the reviews of January, they weren't as good as, say, Levels or, you know, the one that you use. But that said, she was talking about where all this is going. So basically, you are going to be able to use the AI to predict what would happen if you ate this, or predict what will happen. And so you're using the AI instead of your own body. So if I want to go eat, you know, half of a chocolate cake, I can put that into the AI, and it's going to say, well, you're going to have to go for about a 3-hour walk to keep your blood sugar down. You know, you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to do that. And, you know, so you're experimenting with the AI instead of your own body, which I thought was fascinating, but I digress. So, so just know that that's where everything, you know, it started with wearables, and that's where it's going to, you know, continue to go. So kind of be open to this stuff, because it will change your health for sure. All right, Sunny, well, yeah, go ahead.
It absolutely is. And I think like the purpose of it is to develop interoception. So to develop the ability, like, you know, most of us on here, or all of us on here currently, are Whole30 coaches. And we are working with our clients throughout the process to help them, like, where are you feeling this? Where are you experiencing this? How is this affecting you in a way perhaps other than my tummy's upset, I'm constipated, like the really digestive sort of stuff. That's another way of developing interoception. So using a wearable like a CGM, which is also part of the like larger Zoe program, and then getting this real time. So I think the wearables are very much more like a real time, or very like short delayed real time kind of reaction. So you can see the results during the time. With Whole30, and of course I love Whole30 and will never stop. But with Whole30, you do this time, you do this 30 days, and then you start bringing things back in, and you don't have immediate, you kind of have to, I say, touch the hot stove and go, oh, okay, a couple times before you start realizing, oh, geez, every time I eat dairy, my nose clogs up and I wake up the next morning puffy. And that can help you develop that sense of like, oh, this, if X plus Y, then this. Whereas wearing something like a CGM or participating in something like this will give you maybe data that you can't necessarily feel in the moment, but then you look back and go, oh, hell, you know what? I did crash later that day. And not even later that day, well, I see that I had a humongous spike and I had this. So yes, and I think the AI in this with Zoe it's not, I guess this is a good time to kind of say how they're different. So I'll talk about the larger Zoe program here, because I think it is really interesting and very accessible. And I kind of like a little bit parallels with the CGM. I feel like the CGM is really putting your data in your hands right away. And they're really building these apps to help you interpret it. So you're more the person driving, whereas, and I, you know, think this is good and bad in some ways. Zoe is, we're taking your data, and then we're going to have people who know, because this is really complicated stuff. We're going to have this data compiled for you. We're going to send it to you, but then we're going to make recommendations for you so that you don't have to make this choice in the way that like Levels and Vary will, that's the CGMs we talked about last time. If I eat a meal within 2 hours, I get kind of a score that's telling me how well my body metabolized this based on insulin and glucose response. Zoe, the larger program, not the Blueprint Challenge, but their actual offerings, you do a 2-day to 2-week kind of study that includes a CGM, that includes a couple other measurements, including sending in stool samples. They will send you in a few weeks recommendations, and then you have the option to retest, I think, after 4 months. So longer game plan, you have someone literally saying, here's what you can do to achieve the goals that we're hoping for you. Whereas with this, it's a little more like you are in the driver's seat. So with that being said, I think that also matters, like who's going to use them. So with a little bit of time, because I know we want to keep these short and manageable, the larger Zoe study. So what Zoe's larger offerings, I think Barb Gannon was talking about doing this, so I'd be interested to hear if she's done it yet. It's an at-home test, and the current one involves stool testing. So you will send in little poop samples. They tell you how to do it. Your FedEx guy is getting used to it by now. And I don't believe there's a blood test oh, actually, no, I think there might be a blood test. It might be a dried blood test. I'm not sure about that, but there is also a CGM component. So you will have a wearable, that's new. That's only if you elect to participate in the study though. If you don't want anything to do with their study, I don't believe you get the CGM. But right now you get the CGM, you wear that. And I think that's the larger 2 weeks. If you don't want to do that, it's a 2-day stool sample. You have to record what you ate, you record your lifestyle factors, how much you slept. So 2 days versus a 2 week. And I didn't dig far enough in to know like the difference, but I don't think the price is any different. We'll see. But you do a 2-week study, you send everything away, and then they will send this back to you. And all of this is based off of the science of, I mentioned the PREDICT study, PREDICT 1 and PREDICT 2, and it stands for, and I think all the nutritionists here and there are gonna get really excited about this. It stands for Personalized Responses to Dietary Composition Trial. That's what PREDICT stands for. And what they're saying, my friends, essentially is there's a place for public health, but as far as it goes for nutrition, we cannot make these broad strokes about human needs, because bio-individually, we took 1,100 people twice. So there's PREDICT 1 and PREDICT 2. PREDICT 1 is the one that had the individual twin studies. Let's talk about the individual twins real quick. People that are literally biologically identical, like identical twins are the same cell that split and made 2 humans. So they are biologically identical. Those 2 individuals, even living in the same country, so it's not like one lives but like both living in the US or both living in the UK rather, given their lifestyle factors, things that we know, they can be very different. Well, they're actually massively different. Their microbiomes are completely different in different individuals. Their fingerprints, their actual fingerprints are the same. Their bodies are completely different. And so their individual responses to the same meal, so kind of metabolic word studies and then other things, the same thing, vastly different. And those are individual, like those are twins. Those are identical twins. So then for everyone else has a very unique microbiome and responds differently, because different compositions of different bugs will have different responses to food, soluble fibers, so things like that. Also, we have found that the study found that there is a remarkable similarity to the same food. So if I don't have it right now, but if I have my coffee smoothie that I make all the time, my coffee smoothie eaten on a Tuesday versus a Thursday, even given the other factors of workout versus not, have a same overall effect, have a very shockingly predictable effect, even though my glucose response was different on 2 different days. The overall response in the individual was enough that they could say confidently, it's pretty much the same because of your microbiome. So what this is supporting for us as nutritionists is saying that there is really a need. We cannot say to one individual that sweet potatoes are a great source of this, because for other individuals, their guts may not break them down in the same way, and they'd have very different responses. The primary things that they're looking for in Zoe, they're looking at, inflammation based off of both glucose, so blood sugar, and blood fat. That's a really distinct thing. They're looking at blood sugar and blood fat because both are unique markers, and you could have a stable one and have an unstable other response, and it's going to have really, really significant responses to your postprandial, your after eating inflammation responses. And then the second part is the gut microbiome composition. So if you look at their intake studies, their intake equipment, they're doing the CGM for the glucose response, they're doing the blood testing for the blood fat composition, blood fat response, And then they're also getting some of that from the stool testing. The stool testing is going to tell them more about microbiome composition and a little bit about that dietary fat response. So those are the things that it's really looking at. They're looking at your response to your inflammatory response after eating a meal. And then that also ties in with your microbiome composition. They found, again, with their AI, that folks with this type, I think there's like one in particular they called out, like folks that had this one good parasite in particular had a higher overall percentage of food metabolism, like overall, but only like 20% of the population had it or something like that. So then they make recommendations off of that information for you on how to cultivate a better gut microbiome profile. So they will give you recommendations on like your response to these foods, maybe minimize these. I have not done this personally, so I can't tell you what it actually looks like, but they will make individualized responses to you or recommendations for you to make a healthier looking microbiome profile. And then you also have access to a coach. It said unlimited. I assume it's like an email or text sort of thing. And the price is what blew me away. I was ready for this to be and I sound like an ad, but I'm really just like, shoot, sign me up. I was expecting this to be, $600, $1,000. It is $39 a month for 4 months. Yeah. And it's $60 a month if you do it without any kind of like membership. It's just boom. So
That's crazy.
It's bonkers, right? So I'm
Yeah.
pretty much going to sign
So
up.
they're collecting that information because it is so cheap that, they need more bodies. So that's crazy.
Okay,
So
can I
we're all
jump in
doing
for
it,
one
right?
second?
Absolutely, Barb. Come on in.
I did just get my box, and
Okay.
I have not done it yet. I have my physical next week, so I think I'm gonna not mess with that blood work before I start playing with this. But
Right.
that is true for the app part of it, but there is actually a $300 fee for the testing, which they're not like when you go and you put all this stuff in your box and you go to pay, it says, oh, today there's $300 due. And then when you get your results back and you start using the coaching app, which I believe is like text chat kind of thing, there is another option where you have like
It's a premium
to get like a coach, like like a Zoom kind of thing or a daily kind of thing, but they're supposed to be really responsive. And also I wanted to say, and I'll try to remember to go in and leave it in the comments. There was a lady called Health Hackers who did this, and she did a really good video on it. And also she had a 10% off coupon, which I did use, and it saved on both the app part and the whatever. So mine ended up being in like $400 for the test and the tax and 4 months of the app afterwards. So
thank you for that, because I tried twice. I tried just before this call too. I went through the whole thing all over again, and I maybe there's cookies on my computer, but it won't let me select my test. Like I can say I want the 4 months, and then it like freezes on me. So that happened like 2 weeks ago as well. So I didn't get to that part. So thank you. That makes a little more sense, because it did say that the cost of the CGM was included. Like you didn't have to pay for it separately. And I was like, there's no way it's that cheap. So thank you for that.
yeah, and the CGM, you do have to qualify. There's like, you can't be pregnant. There's a couple other things. There's like 3 or 4 states, I know New York is one of them, where it's illegal to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get left out of that. But basically, if you were kind of overall healthy and not carrying a baby inside you, then you were pretty much available to do that.
Nice.
So do we think that $300 is basically to cover the CGM?
Yeah.
No, actually, because even if you don't opt in, it's the same price. That's for testing your poo and testing the blood fat metabolism.
That's the lab.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it is. And it seems to be kind of comparable. There were some cheaper ones, but I think this is more thorough, especially with the combined thing there. And then, I'm interested to see how the app is going to work. Because I know I had talked with Sunny before that one of the things I found interesting was one of the people said that they you get a thing and it tells you green, yellow, and red foods and whatever's best for you, and some of her foods that were green caused an insulin spike when she was using the glucose monitor. And so she contacted them and said, I'm a little confused about that, because that seems like something I should not have. And they went on to explain to her that it's kind of the overall benefit. If that will benefit your gut microbiome and some other stuff, and it seems that your body dealt with the insulin spike fairly well, then they put it in there. It's a green food. And that was kind of the thing that made me go ahead and do it, because I thought, okay, if they've thought it out that far, then I would love to play with this. So
I really love that. I think that's actually a thing that, because you all know I love CGMs and levels in that group. And it's also because it's basically saying like, we're going to score this. We're going to say this is a 10 and you metabolize this way. And this gets into, like, they also combined with Dr. Will B's book, which is one of my primary concerns as a Whole30 coach, which is folks end up eliminating things and thinking I can never have them again. Where instead, we don't want to keep eliminating things. We want to actually bring back as many things as possible. These foods are not bad. A great example of that is beans. Beans and legumes, for the most part, are highly tolerable and highly desirable for most folks. It's a great source of plant polyphenols, but also really that fiber, that soluble fiber that we're looking for. And I think this gets later in the book, but the idea is to have a massive diversity. So Debbie and I were talking about before this on, there's so much confusion. The Predict is helping try to make an individualized, tailored response, but until we're there, it's kind of more of figure out what works best for your body. Something that works for most bodies, here I am saying, like, again, can't be everyone, is a diversity of plants, because we know that there's soluble fiber and then there's insoluble fiber, but actually there's 1,000 paint strokes in between. Resistant starch is not technically a fiber, for example, but it is a massive food for your gut bugs. Those are the things that really create the postbiotics that we're looking for. So there's prebiotics, there's antibiotics, there's postbiotics, there's all these different biotic things out there. But it's not actually fully accurate. It's easy for us to understand, but it's not fully accurate to be like, there are 2 types of fiber. There's actually a massive difference. And the way you get that is by having a very large variety of plants. Like, plants have the monopoly on fiber and these compounds. I think we should still eat meat. Personally, I think we should still eat animal products, and having a variety, and like, instead of saying like having a vegetable at each meal, it might be like, how many different plants, I love doing this, I'm doing this with a couple clients right now, how many different plants can we get in a day? How many different plants can we get over the course of the week? And I have 2 clients right now going through where they are keeping track of what plants that they're eating, and then challenging themselves, can I actually get it up to, we start with 30, can I eat 30 different plants in one day? For those of us on the call right now, we're probably, if you did that, you'd be like, oh hell, 30, and then you're like, oh, I'm actually already making that, because I'm talking plants, I'm talking nuts, I'm talking seeds, I'm talking herbs, cilantro on your tacos, things like that. But then we say, can we get up to 50? Can we stretch ourselves to have 50 different plants in the course of a week? And that's going to help diversify our gut microbiome. And like to Barb's point, you might have something like, and that's the blood fat part too, you might have something like a sweet potato that spikes your glycemic response. But if you have a rise and then not a stark fall, but you have a rise and a gentle return back to normalcy, Predict is saying that we're going to look at also your blood fat response as a marker, and say, if you have that kind of nice smooth response, yeah, it spiked your insulin and it didn't spike your blood fat response, overall, this is a great food for you to have for the diversity of your gut microbiome. Because the thesis that we can I'll stop talking after this, is we want to have the greatest amount of diversity of your gut microbiome. And the way to get that is the greatest variety of substrate or input of food that you can get. There we go. That was a lot of talking for me today.
I love it. I love Sunny School. So I think what we, just as an action step, we can all agree that we should be plant forward. Okay. So no matter, some people are going to do well on meat. Some people are not going to do well on meat. Some people are going to do good with legumes. Some people are not. But we should, put those plants on our plate first and try to diversify as much as you can, because your gut is diversified. So I don't think I'm out of the realm there. I'm not saying go vegan, I'm not saying go carnivore, but there's lots of different diets to get a certain response. Okay, like there's GAPS, there's FODMAPs, there's AIP, there's Whole30, these are specific treatments. Keto, for instance, is a cancer diet. These are for specific things. However, on the day-to-day basis, eat all your plants. I think that's a great way to say it, Sunny. How many more can you get in this week? Because I struggle with the plants, and I know I eat the same ones over and over and over again. So, I think we can all agree that that's something that needs to happen. Okay, Barb, you know that you're going to have to come back and give us the, your entire experience, and Sunny, you too. And you know what? Suzanne and I might have to do it too. So there's that. I really don't feel like $300 is a lot for that information. I mean, it's basically that for a CGM monthly, unless you get a good discount or something, or your insurance pays for it. I'm also curious if, well, maybe if you had a HSA or something, you could put that through your HSA.
About it, but I'm not sure. So lab testing is frequently covered, so it may be, but I think it's like billed through Zoe, so it may not be.
Might not be. Yeah.
And Barb can let me know if I'm wrong, but I think the CGM, if you get the value, and I do get the value out of wearing a CGM, it is a one-time thing. So it's not like they send you, unless you're part of the ongoing study, Barb, let me know, but they don't continue to send you CGMs, I don't think.
No, I think you just get the one. And the testing is actually 7 days for the study. And then because the glucose monitor lasts for 14, they said, if you want to leave it on, and then just have your way with it there for the next 7 days, during which I'm going to eat one of those low carb tortillas and see what it does, because I really want to know. All and right. like whatever is the norm, I am like the 1% anomaly. Every woman in my family has the, every time we go to the doctor, I constantly hear, well, I have never seen that before. I'm like, please stop saying that. But that's why I'm interested, because I think maybe in order to have things actually exit my body, I might have to try. There's some research on people who really need low fiber.
Yes.
Because if you eat too much fiber, it seems to just hang out in my stomach, having a little digestive party for 2 or 3 days. And yeah. So, again, I'm sorry, we're amongst friends here having the poop talk, but it's like, yeah, because when it does exit, it looks just picture perfect and all whatever else. It's just that it moseys on through there and takes forever. So that's part of why I wanted to do this too, to see what they recommend about what's going on in that microbiome,
Yeah, that's a really great point, because we can talk about like, hey, let's talk Bristol stool chart. And if you're like, cool, I got 3s and 4s all the time, that's fantastic. If your transit time is 48 hours and plus, like that's telling you a different composition of your gut microbiome, in kind of the same way that, Debbie was talking about, meat doesn't work for some people and some people do really well on this. That's also talking about your gut microbiome. My argument is, if you don't tolerate meat, if it makes you feel unwell, there's typically something else going on, like a vitamin deficiency or a gastric juice, but usually it comes back to minerals and digestion. So it comes back to microbiome. Right. Interestingly, even found out from the PREDICT studies, they were able to identify a bug in your gut. Like if you have a presence of this, you have a proclivity for chocolate. And those who do not have the gut bug kind of are the ones that are kind of like, it's like Autumn and I. When Autumn Nicholas and I talk about it, she's a chocolate person and I'm kind of like, meh. And that we're finding might be directly correlated to the presence, like the amount of this gut bug you have versus not.
Interesting. 10 years ago, when they started all this gut stuff, they said this is, well, not unlike the genome thing, but it's been coming true, that all of this, the parasites, the bacteria, all that, it's really, I feel like it's coming true. I think if we can figure out the blood glucose, blood fat, and the gut biome, I think we're a good 70% of the way there. I'm sure it'll be 30 or 40% that we're still going to be like, I have no clue, but I really feel like we're going to be there. And yeah, it's been, watching these studies over the years, what they've learned about your vagus nerve, about your immune system being in your gut influencing your brain, for the people with anxiety and depression and whatnot. I mean, it's just been super amazing. So I think this is just another great step. And
that whole mood thing was like, I mean, it literally changed my life. I had no idea. And I believe it was Will Cole. I was listening to something the other day that, and I might have this wrong, but if memory serves me, which on rare occasion it does, that your gut microbiome and your brain are actually out of the same fetal tissue. Mm-hmm. So that connection, and also Debbie doing something on that vagus nerve on the empowered health would be fabulous, because that is amazing. My mom has issues with that, and sometimes like would poop and almost pass out.
Yeah,
interesting.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Someone told me they had a client who passed gas and literally did pass out. And I was like, well, that's a party trick.
Yeah, but that's a vagus nerve trick. That's what that is. Yeah. I just put something about vagus nerve because vagus nerve is not unlike gut health, where it's, the next frontier. And, it keeps hitting me in the face and I keep going, yeah, I'll get to you. So I at least half of what Empowered Health is me putting articles in there that I need to read. And by putting them in there, it makes me read them. So there is one vagus nerve. It just went recently. So just FYI.
Well, I think a place we can start with this is the Blue Poop Challenge is a low-hanging fruit. So the Blue Poop Challenge, I suggest for most people to start, that would be getting your muffins or making your own. So reading up on that, giving it a try, gives you at least a little bit of insight. And I think from there, it's going to get us considering, in the NTA space, we love doing parasite cleanses. We love doing all this stuff where it's like parasites are the root problem. Well, an overgrowth or an overpopulation of parasites, just the same as having like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, like an overgrowth or an over ratio of something that is a baddie, or at least even just an over ratio of just about anything, can be less desirable. But do we really, I guess with the nutritional space of, is taking wormwood and garlic and large amounts of these parasitical, is that the backside in something or other. Someone gave it to me once because they're like, I'm not using this. Like, I'm not going to use this. I think it's going to get folks to double think on that, because we're already many of us are kind of aware of this. We don't want to take antibiotics except for when they're necessary. When they're necessary, please, for the love of God, take them. You need them. But to have some healthy questioning around, like, do we need an antibiotic for this, or can I, do I not need it quite yet? I think the same thing can be next said in the health space of, do I really need to do this, like a gut cleanse thing? Do I really need to do a parasite cleanse? Is this supervised by someone who has a functional, like working, scratch the surface knowledge of gut microbiome? Because are we also just like nuclear bombing our gut microbiome? And really the data on that is it can be months to even years. And you have to be very specific in repopulating. And then that brings, we're not going to get there, but talking about like, what probiotic do I take? Shit, I don't know. What's your shit look like? I don't know.
I thought you were going to the
fecal transplant.
Yeah, I thought that's where you were going.
No, we're not going there, but that's a good place to go too.
Yeah.
That's
more promising than anything, really.
It is. And that's, as a direct result of, we didn't know what we know now, overuse of antibiotics, because they are a miracle. They are, heaven sending, want to think that, whatever you want to think. But they did change. They changed our lives. 100 years ago, the cause of death were things that are now very preventable, were infections. So, but then we were like, holy, these things are great. And we overused them. And then now we have gotten to the place that we actually have to do fecal transplants, and they are a viable medical procedure. They're a very useful medical procedure for people with things like, was it? C. diff, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
They would have to
that just
combine
came out
that
of
with my colonoscopy though, so there's only one humiliation at a time,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say Blue Poop Challenge, and then if you want to dig more into this, Zoe has a great blog, but I would suggest the Fiber Fueled book. It is, again, the Associated Doctor. I don't know what his affiliation is, but
I'll put it in the comments.
Yeah, with a grain of salt, because remember, he's sitting there basically saying plant-based is the way to go, but there's some really great information in there to get you some background and then get you some information on at least thinking about that microbiome. It's a 7-hour listen, so it's not too bad.
Yeah. And, Suzanne and I have had this conversation. I need meat. Okay. So am I going to be a vegan ever? Probably not, but it's never a bad idea to listen and or read somebody else's idea, because you know what? You may end up getting 3 or 4 or 10 or 15 tips that you would not have gotten when you were just listening to the paleo people or something like that. So you will always learn something when you pick up a book. So yeah.
And that one is part of our CEUs, if anyone is wanting to use it.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, remind me to tell Amanda that on our chat, because I think she needs CEUs, and Cindy needs CEUs. So we'll have to do that. That's another story. Suzanne, you got anything?
I just love listening to Sunny talk.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
You see why we have Sunny School.
She's so incredibly smart. It's a pleasure.
She's systems.
Systems.
Logistics, systems, engineering.
It took 30 years for the Hermione to be cool. So my fake laugh. Thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that.
You need a
That's
new
awesome.
tagline, Sunny, making poop fun.
Make it fun. I like words like I talk shit, but
That's great too. I like that.
all right.
All
Well, that
right.
would make me the one that's literally full of shit, so.
Yeah, well, in this group, no, I'm kidding.
If the shoe fits, right?
Right? Oh my God, too funny, Barb.
Bulbs.
All right. Well, thank you immensely, Sunny. And we already have our next topic,
Thank you.
which we will inform everybody of. And I will put a link to Fiber Fueled for you.
Right.
And the health hacker video. Was there anything else I needed to put in the comments?
Do the blue poop challenge so we can go straight
Oh,
to
yeah.
it.
Duh. I think I was going to do that, but I may as well write it down because we like notes. Okay. All right. Anything else you can think of?
Always, but that's good for now.
We're getting better at finding stopping.
I know, right?
Because normally this kind of conversation goes on for hours. So yeah,
Huge topic. It's positively huge.
it's
So I'm
huge.
pretty happy where we got.
Yeah, I think so. That was really good. All right, loves. Mwah. Until the next Sunny School.
Love you all.
Bye.
All right. Bye. Stop recording.